He killed children, tricked robots, survived fires, became computer code, and even trapped in a purgatory of eternal suffering. There's still a chance he might come back. Or maybe not. Who is this maniac who simply refuses to die? Today, you're going to learn the full story of William Afton, the most dangerous man in the FNAF universe, in just 8 minutes. Before becoming the internet's favorite tech-obsessed psychopath, William Afton was just a family man with a peculiar hobby: building robots with his company. With that spirit of innovation, he partnered up with Henry Emily, a more straight-laced, idealistic guy who just wanted to entertain kids without traumatizing them. Together, they founded Fazbear Inc. and opened their first Chuck E. Cheese-style restaurant, Fredbear's Family Diner. A cute restaurant with singing robots and the unmistakable scent of tragedy approaching. And then comes the betrayal straight out of a soap opera. William, in addition to being Henry's business partner, also decided to be the guy who murdered his daughter. Yes, Charlie Emily, the sweet and innocent little girl, was his first victim, and she would eventually become one of the most vengeful spirits against William himself. The puppet. Yeah, folks. The guy had the audacity to kill his best friend's daughter inside the restaurant they opened together. You know what's worse? That was in the late 70s, so we're just getting started. So grab your purple suit, subscribe to the channel, because today we're diving into the full story of our favorite purple serial killer, right here on Zigzag. Here's something you need to understand about William Afton. The guy is literally a magnet for poetic justice and irony, and that's been true since the very beginning. Because check this out, he barbecued his business partner's daughter, right? So, given his mindset, it's safe to assume he wasn't exactly father of the year. No wonder his oldest son, Michael, spent all his time torturing the youngest one. And you can probably already guess what happens next, right? The one who ends up stealing the spotlight in this new tragedy is none other than Michael Afton, who, in a hardcore bullying move, decides to mess with his little brother's trauma, the infamous crying child, or CC for those close to him. Michael, in a moment clearly not approved by any therapist, forces his brother to stick his head inside the mouth of the Fredbear animatronic. Wow, what a brilliant idea, huh? Literally, nothing could possibly go wrong. But of course, like any good 80s robot, our big bear had a hydraulic jaw strong enough to crush a watermelon, or a child's skull. Result? The bite of 83. The kid goes straight to the afterlife. Michael finally starts to sort of realize that maybe he went a bit too far this time. And William, who was already a bit unhinged, finds himself suffering the same kind of pain he made his ex-partner go through a few years earlier. Kinda hypocritical, right? It's fine to roast other people's kids, but mine? Oh no, not that. That trauma was the final Joker-style push the guy needed to dive headfirst into madness. And this is where things start to get really bloody. After the tragedy of the bite of 83, William Afton did what any major corporation would do when faced with a scandal involving child death: a rebranding. Thus, a new version of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza was born, now with more glitter, more animatronics, and fewer morals. But behind the colorful facade and cheerful songs, William officially began to transform into the villain we all know and fear. Wearing a Spring Bonnie suit, he would lure children away from the eyes of adults and do the unthinkable: erase the kids' social security numbers and stuff their bodies into the animatronics themselves. This macabre event became known as the Missing Children Incident, or MCI, for those who like fancy acronyms for tragedy. It was at this point that the robots started acting kind of weird, like moving on their own, bleeding from the inside, and staring into security cameras like they knew too much. And William didn't care. To him, it was just another Tuesday. After all, this was merely a stage in a long experiment still in its early phases of study. But what happens next is what really pushes him into pure sadism. Before the sadism goes full throttle, subscribe to the channel, or else William will show up on your PC in the form of a virus. Or worse, a theory YouTuber. If you thought William Afton had already hit the ceiling of cruelty, Sister Location comes in to show that the man still had an entire basement of sadism to explore. Here, he discovers a substance called Remnant, a kind of paranormal energy that allows a child's soul to be trapped inside a machine. And what does he do with this information? An amusement park? The most realistic cosplay ever made? Of course not. Because remnants only work if there are very strong emotions at the moment of the child's barbecuing. And William learned that fear was the one that generated the best results. He builds an entire line of killer animatronics with even more disturbing designs, led by Circus Baby, created specifically to lure and kill children. But that's when, my friends, the dramatic irony magnet strikes again, because the child Baby lures in is none other than his own youngest daughter, Elizabeth. And when she's swallowed alive by Baby, what does William feel? Guilt? Regret? No. He feels pride. Yes, the guy watches his daughter get devoured by one of his creations and feels happy because it worked. And that's how he goes from being the guy who wanted to bring his son back to the cold-blooded serial killer who just wants to cause harm. And honorable mention goes to his other son, Michael, who also goes down in this same game, becoming a literal zombie, killed by the same animatronics Afton had built. The purple guy's kill streak is 3 Aftons to 0, but the scoreboard was about to flip. 10 years later, William Afton, now practically the gold standard of Father of the Year and serial killer, decides to visit the old abandoned restaurant. The same one from the first game, with the smell of mold and children's screams in the air. The mission has to do with his experiments. Destroy the animatronics possessed by the children he himself murdered in an attempt to study the remnant of those original victims. But karma, as always, has perfect timing, and life is a box full of surprises. Led by the puppet, the spirits of the victims decide to go on a collective revenge stroll and corner our evil engineer. With no way out, William tries to hide in the old spring Bonnie suit. Only it was already old, rusty, and with a highly murderous spring lock system. So he gets impaled from the inside by his own armor, trapped there like a vengeful sardine in a can of iron, and left to rot in the secret room of the restaurant. Poetic, right? But nothing is more poetic than our purple guy's next appearance. Because nothing says visionary business like turning a history of child murders into a horror attraction for the whole family. Fazbear Entertainment, clearly led by a committee of marketing geniuses, decided to open Fazbear's Fright, a haunted house themed around the very real crimes that happened in their restaurants. Yeah, dude, I know. They basically looked at headlines like missing children, possessed robots, founder impaled, and thought this would make a fun ride for the youth. Why did they think that?
Hello, I like money.
The only little problem, which to be fair, no one could have predicted, the house ended up actually haunted since William Afton, now renamed as Springtrap, was still there, with his rotten body inside the Bonnie suit, and with a soul reeking of revenge, ready to turn the kids' fun into yet another bloodbath. Who needs special effects when the real monster comes included in the package, right? And if you don't want to become child paste crushed inside a robot, type hashtag FNAF in the comments. In the end, William Afton fell right into the final trap set by his former partner, Henry Emily, who burned down Freddy Fazbear's pizza place with everyone inside, including Afton himself, still trapped in the Springtrap suit. But death was just the beginning of the punishment. He ended up in the eternal purgatory of Ultimate Custom Night, where he is endlessly tortured by Cassidy, the vengeful spirit who possessed Golden Freddy. No escape, no rest, just an infinite loop of suffering. And honestly, he deserved every second. And in the end, the lingering question is, does evil really die? Because after everything, William Afton still finds a way to come back. With his new digital form as Glitchtrap, he may just be waiting for the next chance to manifest. And with the release of Secret of the Mimic, the doubt remains in the air. Theories suggest that either Afton is going to find a new way back, even though his main soul is trapped in the UCN with Cassidy, or the Mimic is going to turn the entire lore upside down. What do you think? Tell us in the comments.